Welcome into the Energy Tech Podcast presented by Offsite Energy. Today we are filming live from ENTELEC 2026 and we are excited to welcome Lisa Clark, Manager of SCADA Solutions with Autosol. Guys, welcome to Galveston.
Hey Jeff, it is good to be here. I'm your co-host Mike Flotis with the Energy Tech Podcast right here in Galveston, Texas, part of ENTELEC 2026. And she is a hard person to get a hold of and get on the set. Why? Because she's got a lot of things that she's working on. And this is Lisa Clark with Autosol. Lisa, it is good to have you on the show.
Thanks for inviting me. It's been a long time since we've seen each other.
Yes, it has been. You know, we play in the same space, but, you know, you are just a busy person lately. And I think a lot of that has to do with your new role at Autosol, right?
Yeah, so developing a new team and getting to learn the new ropes of having a development team, having a QA team, having tech support alongside of that integration that I've come to love.
Yeah.
So still getting to do that integration part of the SCADA realm, but having that large tech support behind it kind of gives me that day-to-day challenge. I've got to learn something new, maybe propose something new.
Yes.
So it's exciting and very, very, very busy.
Well, you know, the very first time I met you, you were with, of course, it was a different organization. I was over at a company called Howard Energy at the time. And, you know, you were working with us on some projects. And one of the things I noticed is your project prowess was on point all the time. And I think you've translated that into what you're doing right now at Autosol. So you're carrying that over. And it's something that you do really well. And I do want to ask you, what do you think has changed for you, not just this year, but in your new role?
Yeah, so I was a project manager of SCADA integrations, still am,
Right.
just at the manager level now.
Yes.
But in my new role, kind of my team is now my new project.
Yeah.
And then also with Autosol, the development team as the main focus of Autosol in general, right? They have their own IP with ACM,
Right.
EACM, and then our newly released broker. They have their own products. And so I'm kind of a project as engineering services. So I get to manage, kind of be the project manager there. I have to kind of help weave and make sure that our engineers are complementing that product and making sure that when it is implemented out in the field, when EACM is implemented out there, are your alias groups going to complement or hinder your ignition tags, per se, like your UDTs? So just kind of educating the clients as we go. That's kind of what our team does. My main focus is ignition, but of course, still doing old SIGNIT.
Yes, of course. Yeah, so you're doing that. And so, you know, one of the things, Lisa, so, you know, you hit on something that I think is important, and maybe you can address this. I think you've got energy, oil and gas clients that you touch for sure. You know, what do you know, we had Arlen Nipper on the show this morning, and I know just in experience working with the Unified Namespace, especially with UDTs, do you think that there are some common mistakes? I wouldn't call them common mistakes. We'll call them misnomers that maybe energy customers make when they're first starting to set out their UDTs and make some data decisions? You think there's some things that they're doing that they can probably fix early?
Yeah, I mean, UDTs in general, just try and have it as agnostic as possible. It would be perfect if you could have 1 meter UDT and 1 plunger UDT, but plungers are a perfect example. You don't control a SCADA pack plunger the same you control an Emerson plunger. So that is a perfect example of when you would need 2 UDTs for those. But everything else, try your best to have as minimal UDTs as possible, right? Because in a world where we're scaling and growing, you don't have room or time or any maintenance effort. You don't want maintenance effort to maintain multiple UDTs.
Right.
But then at the instance side, we kind of have to think of tags and data in a new realm, in a new headspace. We normally, as SCADA engineers or even people out in the field, we're used to, you know, let's say upstream, for example, we're used to, you know, facility pad well being on a route, and then my route is in an area, and my area is in probably a basin, right? Okay, yeah, routes change. So if I'm in charge of one route, it changes. Okay, well, my equipment moves from well A to well B. So you kind of, yes, the physical and geographic way of thinking it, how we think in our head, maybe how you want to put your instances together, but at the same time, you need to think, okay, well, oil and gas does UNS different. what UNS was built for were things that didn't move.
Right, yeah. Manufacturing plants.
Right, and so once you build a plant, you don't up and move your plant, across the state. But
Right.
we sometimes move our equipment from well to well.
You do.
We also move, like I was saying, routes. So we have to think of it, okay, yes, that's how we operate our SCADA systems, but we got to get really clever, and it's kind of an art. Once UNS entered in oil and gas,
Yes.
UNS became like an art. So I like to, whenever I'm working with customers, especially when we're doing like edge deployments or EACM, you have 300 EACMs or hundreds and hundreds. Think of this as like it's your new language. You need to come up with your company's language. How are you going to talk? What makes sense for you?
Right.
And so, yeah. Sorry, I'm like rambling on.
No, that's really good. So you're bringing up a good point, and especially working in energy, oil, and gas, you are absolutely 100% correct. If I look at ISA 95 Part 2, which was by design for plants, right? Which is what you're saying. I have this area, I have a line, I have a unit, right? Well, no one's going to rip out, a line for making soap. Like you're not going to do that. But
Right.
what you can do is you can move vessels or GPUs. You can move units around from well to well. Compressor fleet is another common one. So I think you're right in that you really want to structure that, and you present a really good case because energy, oil, and gas, it's not just so much that they're operating, but they also do tons of iteration or what I call merger and acquisition.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Exactly. No, 100%.
And so when you do that, guess what?
Now you have
might
two languages.
Exactly. So 2 islands. It's almost like 2 different islands, and you really have to think about that. So you're spot on when you say, if you're going to do this, let's sit down and understand the horizon of the organization, not just what we're doing right now. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Are you a merger and acquisition company? Are you going to, dig wells and stay? Do you want to keep your tag providers separate? Do you want to keep your IO gateway separate and just acknowledge that your UDTs are different because we're an acquisition type of company?
Yes.
Yeah. So definitely. SCADA we're no longer just the people behind the computer bringing in bits and bytes and making them on the screen and adding alarms and turning off alarms. We are now also helping the people bring it in. We have to help coach the automation engineers
Yes.
to make sure that they're doing configurations, part of our new governance. And then also we need to understand the business because we are enabling the business. That is now our new role. SCADA has dramatically changed.
Yes.
And that's kind of a very exciting part of coming into my new role here at Autosol because Autosol is one of those software products. That's what you think. When you hear Autosol, all you think is ACM,
Right.
EACM, right? You think of an actual product.
Right.
You're going to go buy that product off the shelf, implement it, and move on.
A physical box even sometimes.
Yeah, EACM. So now, whenever you're implementing all of that, I have to go help and coach them those type of questions. Okay, well, when you're about to deploy these 500 EACMs, how are you going to manage these?
Right.
Thanks for buying them, but how are you going to manage
Right.
it?
Yes, and it's not just the managing part that you're talking about, but Lisa, how do you handle competing interests? Because you have production groups. If you're in energy, you've got production. And then sometimes these companies have midstream assets, meaning I take my gas or my liquid and then I push it to sales. And then I have a pipeline, and then I have a midstream plant it's being treated at. And then from there, I might have something downstream. So now I have the competing interest of the cloud engineering group. I now have the competing interest of IT. I also have the competing interest of production foreman, and then or 4 persons, and then I have the competing interest of the business. So in your experience, how do you handle that? I mean, it's a big job.
Like all the people having their own say of how the tags should be.
Yeah.
Yes, that is quite tricky because I've been in a project before where it's a democracy. You got to get everybody's opinion. Let's make sure everybody is happy.
Yeah.
That discussion leads to let's meet again next week. Let's meet again next week. Let's meet again next week. And at that point, your SCADA integrator has already made the screens. You've already cut the check. The PO's done.
Yeah.
The automation guy probably got really tired of waiting on you. He probably already loaded the PLC program and moved on without you.
Yeah.
So it is one pro and con. I bring that up as like, hey, normally I say, let's weigh out all the options. I do want you to weigh out all the options and talk to all the people, get their opinions, say, thank you for your opinion, thank you for your opinion, thank you for your opinion. But this is our decision because we're going to try it out. We got to implement it. I normally suggest people sit on it a whole cycle, whatever that cycle may be.
Got it.
You got to go through a whole production month. You got to go through a whole measurement month.
Right.
You need to go through a route change.
Right.
Whatever is frustration or issues currently in your company, go through one of those on a pilot before you move forward, so that you can work out those kinks where it's not already implemented throughout your whole system. So kind of let it run parallel with your current SCADA.
Right.
Even if you don't like it, well, now you have lessons learned, and it didn't impact anything. It wasn't historizing, it wasn't alarming,
Right.
but you had that UNS, that new tag structure, that new UDT structure, just kind of sitting here. We were all loving on it, looking at it.
Right.
But you at least got to do something. Make a decision, stick with it, let it sit there for a few months and see, how does it impact your historian group? How does it impact your production accounting group? And then kind of go from there. You got to see it to believe it.
No, I think you're right. Let me ask you this, because that was a really good answer for that. What about in terms of the interest of this security? Because you obviously, anytime you're in these projects, you're always going to have the sniff test of the CISO, or the team that's handling security. And the unified namespace is not your Purdue model. So when anyone looks at it, you're not looking at the same typical layers. You're saying, hey, this is creating that single source of truth, right? And so how have you handled that in the past, in terms of security?
Security, what has hindered me with these large implementations is, you got to be secure, so you can't just go remote in and start changing things, right? They're adding a new level. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 3.5 DMZ. You have all the Purdue layers. We used to just be able to go into SCADA, clickety-clack, change some things, and move on.
Yes.
But now, with the CISO recommendations and all the security recommendations, normally there's going to be 2 layers between your SCADA systems from front end to I/O.
Yes.
And now, as SCADA engineers, we have to re-architect and think, how are we going to set up this gateway network if we're talking ignition?
Yes.
How are we going to set this up? Are we going to have our I/O sitting down here? Or where are we going to put our edge? And how are they all going to talk? Like technically, physically, are we doing scripts? Are we doing MQTT? Are we doing gateway network messages? Physically, how are we going to talk? So again, SCADA is no longer becoming a problem of technology. We've solved the technology.
Yes.
I think we've solved it. We're just loving on it right now.
I think you're right.
Our problem right now is we have to become artists.
No, I think you're right, especially in the place that Ignition serves really well, which is that IoT piece, right? So it serves a really good place. It's not just like other legacy SCADA systems where it's just left to controls, right? So there's a lot more possibility there. So having done that, Lisa, what are you excited about with the unified namespace? What's your outlook right now going into the rest of the year for the UNS?
So what makes me excited about that effort, that whole entire effort, what is it meant for? What is the purpose of it? It is to get all your tags clean and in one beautiful language that's digestible, readable, and consistent.
Right.
What that does for the SCADA world, we used to be the ones that had to do all the calculations, do all the reports.
Yes.
Production accounting, hey, can you do the CSV for me? The regulations team, hey, can you do all these emissions calculations for me? Maybe the people running the compressor leases, hey, can you do a calculation on compressor on and off for me so I can go back and get my money's worth if it didn't,
Right.
We used to be the people that were just calculating, and we were bogged down. We weren't SCADA engineers.
Right.
Now with this new UNS feature, or just everybody focusing so much on getting your tags clean. Once your tags are clean, that's what I was saying, the technology problem's already solved. What excites me is now what can SCADA feed?
Yeah.
We have so many applications and products out there that you can buy off the shelf, and SCADA can feed it like that because our data is now clean.
Exactly.
Doing an interface project like a migration into Pi or a migration into Snowflake or the next technology used to be a project, months and months of project. Now it's, my tags are beautiful, they're clean, they're sitting in this data lake or they're sitting in this broker. Oh, you want a new historian? Cool, plug it in, let's go.
Yes. Or information going to the cloud, right?
Yep.
So you can do that as a consumer. So you've got lots of consumers now, right, at the broker level that you otherwise didn't have before.
Right. And let's talk about the buzzword AI. If your tags are clean, beautiful, in a language that's consistent, what what AI isn't going to be able to do something fun with that?
I'm so glad you said that. We're working with a client right now, and they're using AI Readiness. So this is the exact same thing. This is, hey, take data. So we have it going, same thing. It's a broker IoT bridge to Snowflake. And then from there, you've got nice, clean, contextual data that you can use right inside of Claude or in Cortex for Snowflake. So you bring a really good, valid point for that.
That's the exciting part. What else can I do as a SCADA engineer now? Take me out of
Yes.
my platform. Let's go to the next thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So yeah, because
awesome.
the AI, one thing that we're adding on, or we just added on to our EACM, all your EACM's a connector to Thread, which is also a knowledge graph AI capability, where it now is like, let's put the relationships on your tags, and it's sitting on top of EACM, and it's already got the tags in that nice structure. So it's endless. But literally that connection takes about 10 minutes because I already have my tags clean.
Yes.
Claude, or like you said, whatever AI
Yeah.
of choice, doesn't need anything because
Yes.
you've already made it clean.
Yes.
It's no longer a project.
Yes. So working with your team, we're coming to a close here, Lisa, because man, I want to keep you here, but I can't. But I do want to ask you this. How do you work well? If I'm a small producer in West Texas right now, I'm not Chevron, I'm not Exxon, I'm a mid producer in the area in West Texas. How do you work with that team in a nutshell? What are some of the things that you do?
I don't know. I'm a big proponent of pilots, and a
Okay.
small, medium company, that is probably the best thing for it, because that's probably the type of size that's nervous of taking on a big change, or also nervous of taking on a big financial burden.
Yes.
So let's get a pilot going. A few sites, get your dirtiest site, get your grossest site, the one that's been sitting there for the past 20 years and nobody wants to touch it because it's got the worst PLC program. Get that
Yes.
site. Let's just do a few pilots, kind of get you on board, and then help you realize there's tools out there that'll help you realize how we can quickly get the other sites on board and kind of
Yes.
bring down that shock, that nervousness that medium-sized company would have. Because like you
Yes.
said, they don't have that capital to just go, oop, I'm going to go buy this and
Yes.
just implement because I have this wonderful CapEx budget.
Yes.
So I'm a big proponent of pilots. I think you got to see it to believe it. You got to understand it. You got to touch it.
Yes.
And it kind of brings the nerves down.
There you go. So there you go. I think if Lisa Clark, what you're ultimately saying is, if you want to do that, this team right here at Autosol, Lisa and her team, are providing the ability for you to create that POC, to implement something like the UNS in order to take your data and make it a commodity in your business or in the field, right?
Right.
That is awesome. I want to keep you, but I can't. Lisa Clark,
All right.
it was good to have you here on the Energy Tech podcast. Her team is here. You can catch the Autosol booth right here at ENTELEC 2026. Lisa, it was great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. Nice seeing you again.
Yes, absolutely. This was great.